Good evening, boys and girls. Are you ready for bed? Are you ready for a bedtime story? Well, this story, called Billy and the Blue Whale. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who was very, very shy. He didn't have any brothers or sisters, and he lived all alone with his mummy and daddy. But his mummy and daddy were always working. His daddy worked in a factory miles and miles and miles away from his home, meaning that Billy only saw him on the weekends. His mom worked in a restaurant, and she came back really late every night. So the boy, when he left school each day, had to get on the bus, get off the bus, walk all the way up the stairs to his house, open the door, turn on the oven, cook the food that his mom had prepared the night before, eat it by himself, do his homework by himself, brush his teeth, wash his face, and go to bed, all by himself. His mom would come home about 10 o'clock at night, and he was always still awake, waiting for her. Whenever he heard his mom close the door as she came in from work, he would close his eyes and go to sleep, or pretend to go to sleep even. And every time his mom came back, she would always, without fail, go straight to Billy's bedroom first, just to check that he was sleeping. And every night she would see his eyes were closed, and every single night she would give him a kiss on his forehead. Billy always tried to stay awake, but as soon as his mom kissed his head, he fell fast asleep. In the mornings, when he would get up, his mom would have breakfast with him, tell him what food she'd made the night before, so that he would know what he had to prepare for dinner that night to eat alone again. And then Billy would go to school. On the weekends, Billy's dad would always get home on Friday night around 10 or 11 o'clock. And so that was a night that Billy could stay up a little bit later than usual, and because there was no school on Saturdays. Anyway, this boy, Billy, did not have a very nice life. You see, all he did was come home every day by himself. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, he would go home all by himself and look after himself until he fell asleep when his mum kissed him. He didn't have any friends to play with, and he could never go outside because his mum said not to play outside. Sometimes he could go outside on the weekend, but his dad would come home on the weekend, and his dad would usually sleep on the sofa all the time because he was so tired from working hard. This meant Billy usually had to help his mum to wash and clean and do all the housework. So the boy felt very, very fed up. Well, one day, I think it was a Tuesday afternoon, the boy was feeling particularly fed up, and he got off his school bus and went upstairs to his house, opened the door, went in, and turned on the oven for the food. And then he heard a ding-dong at the door. Oh, who's that? I didn't ask any friends to come around, he thought. So he went and opened the door, and there, at the bottom of the step, was a little box, and nobody to be seen. He looked around, but he couldn't see anybody. And he knew that postmen didn't even come at 5 o'clock. So, after making sure that the coast was all clear, he took the little package under his arm and quickly closed the door and went and put it on the kitchen table. He turned off the oven so he could let his food cool down a bit. And as his food was cooling down, he went to the kitchen table and opened up the little box. He unravelled the delicate paper-wrapped present to find a little note. And the little note said, "Follow the blue whale." Is this for me or for Mum? He thought. Follow the blue whale? What does that mean? Well, he couldn't really think of what the note meant, And then he started to get hungry and remembered that his food was getting cold in the cooling oven. So he put the card on top of the piano and went and ate his dinner. As he was washing his dishes, he thought about the little note. Blue whale, blue whale, what does it mean? As he was washing his face and brushing his teeth and getting ready for bed, he kept thinking about the blue whale. A blue whale, blue whale. I have no idea what that means. And as he was putting on his pajamas and getting ready for bed, blue whale, blue whale. Billy still had no idea. Frustrated and tired, he took the box and put it in the trash. And he took it out again and put it under the kitchen sink, just in case. He left the card on top of the piano so that he would be able to see it in the morning, and so that his mom might be able to see it when she gets home, and perhaps she would be able to work out what blue whale meant. As he closed his eyes, he thought, what is this blue whale? He still had no idea. And then, as usual, he heard his mom opening the door. So he closed his eyes and got a kiss on the head and fell asleep. And he forgot all about the note that told him to follow the blue whale. The next day, he got up and did the same as usual, all by himself. And the next day, and the next day. And then it was the weekend and his dad came home and slept on the sofa for what seemed like 2 days straight. Billy's life went on like this for a few weeks, and I think his dad took the card off the piano because nobody knew what it was for, and so everyone in the house forgot about the little note that just said, follow the blue whale. And then one strange day, as Billy was going to school on the school bus, he saw a picture of a blue whale on a car driving by. When he was in the classroom, he was learning his new words for the week, and there, in his school book, was a blue whale at the top of the page. At playtime, even his friend was playing with a toy blue whale, and then, as he was getting on the bus to go home, to the empty house, to the cold food in the fridge that he had to heat up, there, in his seat, where he always sits alone by the window near the back, was a small, handmade blue whale. He picked it up, and it said, "Come with me." Billy did not know what to do, so he held on tight to this blue whale and didn't say a word. When he got off the bus, the blue whale started to pull, like a magnet, but in the opposite direction. And it was pulling him, so he held on tight. And as Billy was getting close to his door, the blue whale pulled him past the door and away down the street. Billy was now trying to hold on to this blue whale, like someone might hold on to a dog that was running away with a leash. The blue whale kept pulling and pulling and pulling, and Billy kept running and running and running. He thought his arms and legs were going to fall off. But before he knew it, he was down the street, and he didn't know where he was. The blue whale kept pulling and pulling and pulling, and pulled Billy all the way to the harbour, where all the boats were parked up. The blue whale pulled Billy onto a ship that didn't seem to belong in that dock. Billy was pulled along the deck and down the steps into the belly of the boats and into a wooden cabin that smelled warm and piney. Well, it was getting dark, and it was dark in the cabin, and the boy was very, very hungry. Not scared, funnily, just hungry. And there was some food. A nice sandwich and a glass of warm milk. Billy sat down and ate the sandwich and drank the milk, and had no thought of what time it was, nor the cold food that was waiting for him in the fridge at home. But suddenly the note started to make some sense. Suddenly, Billy came out of his daydream to find himself struggling to balance on his own 2 feet. He tried to get out and run up the steps to the deck, but when he got to the top of the ship had already set sail, and there was sea everywhere all around, lit by the reflection of the clear full moon, and he was hundreds and hundreds of miles away from home. He didn't know what to do. He started to cry. But then the blue whale started to nudge him on his shoulder, gently. You see, as I'm sure you have guessed, this was not any ordinary toy blue whale. It was a magic floating blue whale, and it was looking at Billy with its innocent eyes. "What do you want now?" sobbed Billy. "How am I ever going to get back home? What's Mum going to do when she gets home and I'm not in my bed?" Billy even thought for a second that he may never ever sleep a wink again in his whole life if his mother doesn't give him a kiss on his forehead. The blue whale nudged his shoulder again, and so Billy went back along the deck, down the stairs, and to another room this time, further down into the belly of the ship. The blue whale pointed with its tail to the door, and Billy opened the door with his eyes still wet from the tears. There, inside the room, sitting at a grand wooden desk with maps sprawled all across, held down by candles and compasses and clocks, was a very old man with white hair under his captain's hat and a white beard grown neatly to the top of his navy coat. The smell of the captain's pipe mixed with the wax and the wood and the old spice. "You must be the captain of this mysterious ship," thought Billy. The boy sat down, and the old man started to explain everything. Well, almost everything. "Billy," said the old man in a deep and warm voice, his face lighting up the moment Billy's name left his lips. "Billy," he announced again, "welcome to my ship. I'm your grandfather." With that, Billy actually fell off his chair. He had never ever seen his grandfather, and he had never even heard a single word about him, let alone the fact that he was a captain of a ship. "Billy, I'm your daddy's father, and I'm the captain of this magical ship." Well, by the time Billy had gotten back onto his chair and rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't dreaming, he actually began to notice that this old man with thick white hair and a trim beard actually did start to look a bit like his daddy. It was as if this captain was an older version. "Billy," said the old man again, as if he was greeting his favourite grandson after returning from a long trip. "I've been watching you from afar, because I have this magic telescope on my ship, and I could see everything that you have been doing. I've been so sad watching you come home every night to make your own dinner and go to bed all by yourself, and I'm sorry I couldn't come and help you. But that's why I sent the blue whale to come and get you. I hope you don't mind." Billy was actually relieved that he now knew where he was, why he was there, and who he was with. He was with his grandpa, and he was on a magical ship, and all because he was brought there by a magical blue whale. "This is just amazing," thought Billy, and he felt much better, because up until then he was getting a bit scared. Having calmed down, Billy started to ask some questions. "So, Grandpa, how long have you been on this magical ship? Where have you been to? What does the ship do? How do you drive it? Where does it go? Where are we going? What are we going to do? Where's the food? Because I'm getting a bit hungry now. Does Mum know? Does Dad know?" "Oh, I will tell you all that soon," replied the old man. "First, follow me." And so Billy's grandpa, the captain of this magical vessel, took Billy on a tour all around the ship, down into the bottom to see the engine, up to the top where the wind was blowing and the breeze was splashing the water off the waves, and Billy could see thousands and thousands of seagulls in the blue sky, and the silvery dolphins jumping and splashing through the water, laughing as they went by. And then, as Billy's grandpa took off his hat, he pointed in the distance and said, "Look over there." Billy looked ahead, and in the distance he could see the biggest animal in the whole wide world, the big blue whale, rising up from the bottom of the water, up and launching itself into the air, its huge blue body almost stopping for a moment in the air. A heartbeat, a blink of an eye, before it crashed down, making a huge wave that sprayed water all over the boats and all over Billy's face.
"Oh, that's my favourite part," said the captain of the ship. "We see these all the time. Actually, the blue whale is a magical animal. And that's why we have a magical blue whale mascot that came and picked you up and brought you back here. It's rather good, isn't it? Sometimes we ask fathers to make their children little blue whales to keep them safe if their fathers are working a lot and can't spend much time with their children."
Ah, that's why my daddy made me a blue whale from his old jeans a long time ago. I can't remember where it is now, said Billy. I'm going to have to go and find it, he thought.
It's okay, the blue whale knows where you are and what you're doing. It's a safe, magical little toy,
informed Grandpa. Well, that makes sense, thought Billy.
Let me take you where I drive this magical ship,
Grandpa continued. And so the captain took Billy to the helm, where there was a big wooden wheel, and he showed Billy how to steer the huge ship. After a while, Billy was feeling really tired and hungry, so the captain took him for some food and showed him his cabin and nice warm bed. Billy went to sleep, and he had the most wonderful dream about all the animals in the sea, blue whales and dolphins and seagulls, and of course, the magical ship. But he woke up with a bump. The ship was rocking, and he had fallen out of bed.
Quickly, get up,
shouted the captain.
We're in a storm.
Billy looked out of the window and saw waves as big as mountains, and the rain was spitting and splashing and smashing at the window. Billy was frightened. The captain, who had been very friendly up until now, had a worried look on his face. His eyebrows were down, and his nose was scrunched, and his mouth and lips were tight.
Follow me quickly, and put this on.
The captain threw a wet, heavy life jacket at Billy. It was cold and very heavy, and it didn't fit well, but Billy put his arms through and managed to zip it up as he was walking up the steps. Quickly, ordered the captain as he pulled Billy's arm right to the top of the ship and into the helm.
Help me steer the ship.
The captain grabbed a big wooden wheel and tried to turn it from the top, and Billy reached down and tried to push as hard as he could from the bottom.
Hold on tight,
pleaded the captain. Now the ship was sailing up to the top of the wave, and Billy was looking up, as if he was looking at the sky, but he was standing up straight. And then, as the ship reached the top of the mountainous wave, Billy held his breath, and the ship seemed to pause for a second, floating there in the air for a heartbeat. And in the blink of an eye, the ship crashed down into the water, plunging through the huge waves like a rubber duck in a bathtub. The ship went up again and down and up and down again and again and again. Billy was starting to get dizzy. He was feeling seasick. The birds were screaming in the sky, and the dolphins were nowhere to be seen. The water was spitting and splashing and crashing onto the boat, and it was dark. And then the lightning started, followed by the roaring thunder, and sparks of light licked the waves. Thunder bellowed all around. In the distance, over the waves, in what seemed to be a calmer slither of the ocean, Billy could just about make out the outlines, the shining belly of the blue whale. Over there, look! Shouted Billy. Follow the blue whale! And so Billy and the captain tried, tired and wet, with what energy they had left, heaved and pushed the big wooden wheel and steered the ship towards the blue whale. And after what seemed like an eternity, a lifetime, 100 years, the waves got tired and calmed down. The rain seemed to dry up and stop falling so hard, and eventually the ship came to settle on very calm and peaceful waters. It was as if they were on an ice rink, gliding effortlessly along. The waves spread flat and the clouds opened up to let the beautiful warm sun rays shine down onto the ship. Within minutes the ship was dry, The seagulls were happy, and the blue whale was spouting its water from its blowhole. Billy looked out over the vast blue ocean and spotted an island, a small but beautiful island with lots and lots of trees and greenery. Looking closer, he saw that some smoke was coming up out from the island. Puzzled and concerned, he looked over to his grandpa, who looked back, raised one white eyebrow and exclaimed,
"It's clear now. We have to go to the island to help whoever is in danger. That's what the blue whale was telling us."
And so they followed the blue whale all the way to the island. The smoke plumes were spewing out from the middle of the forest on the island, growing bigger and bigger, reaching up to scratch at the sky. And just as the ship came to a stop the shallow waters of the shore, dropping the anchor, Billy could feel the heat of the fire whipping out from behind the trees.
"Get ready!"
shouted Grandpa as he threw a big gun at Billy to catch.
"And take this as well,"
he said, and handed him a short sword.
"Let's jump in here and get ready to go."
Billy looked down over the edge of the ship to see a tiny little rowing boat below.
"Come on!"
ordered the captain after he had jumped all the way down to the boat below. Billy was scared because he didn't like heights very much.
"I'll catch you."
Billy took another deep breath, closed his eyes, and jumped. Grandpa caught him in his very strong and firm arms, and they both sat down and started to row the boat to the island, on fire. As they were rowing the boat, Billy could hear the noises getting louder and louder. Boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. He could see his grandpa's face again, that same worried face he had during the storm, his squinting eyes and his tight lips.
"We can do it," he said.
"Do what?" shouted Billy, the words drowned out by the deafening noise coming from ahead. Thoughts whipped through Billy's head like the flames from the trees, and then he looked back across the waves, and he saw the blue whale, his big eye looking right back at him. The whale winked and smiled. Billy jumped off the rowing boat into the knee-high water, tickling his legs, and held on tight to the gun and the sword as he turned to face the unknown, scared and unsure of what was going to happen or what they would encounter. Billy wanted to go home, but there was no turning back now. Boom, bada boom, bada boom. The noise grew louder as Billy and his grandpa marched up out of the shore and on to the hot, fine, sandy beach. They grabbed the wet, heavy rope and pulled the rowing boat up onto the sand. It was starting to get dark, but the fire in the trees behind grew lighter and brighter, stronger and hotter. Billy had seen the whale, so he was feeling a bit less scared, but Grandpa's face was still tight and worried. Billy had the knife and the gun ready, but he felt clumsy, and he wasn't sure how or what he was supposed to do and how he would use it. He'd never used a gun before. I mean, why would he need to know? A little boy. His confusion and fixation on how clumsy he felt soon moved aside for the clear and present realization that he didn't know what was behind the trees, nor did he know why the island was on fire, or what was making those ear-pounding noises that were coming from within, from the core, from the amber jungle. The orange glow of the sky was making Billy scared, but Grandpa stood firm.
"Follow me,"
he ordered, and they continued up the beach. It seemed to take 10 steps to move an inch as the incline of the beach got steeper and steeper until they reached the top, the grassy part. Now they were facing the tree line, only one way, straight ahead. The noise was getting louder and louder. Boom, bada boom, bada boom. And they could feel the heat from the fire bursting through the trees now, and then they could hear the screams and the noises. Billy finally spoke to Grandpa. "What are we doing, Grandpa? And who are these people?" Grandpa replied,
"I don't know, but the whale told us we had to help these people. That's what I do. In this magic ship, the whale comes to visit me and tells me where we have to go, and we go there. And there's always somebody that needs help, and this time we are here, and I needed you to come and help me."
And so Billy and his grandpa walked through into the belly of the forest, into a big and wide opening in the middle of the island. And there is where Billy saw everything. In the middle of the island is where the people of the island must have been living, and all the houses built around the edges of the large opening were on fire, and in the middle of the houses was a large pyramid rising up past the tops of the trees well above the houses. It was made out of bamboo and sticks and trees, and on the top of the triangle temple was the king of the island and his daughter, the princess. They were both stuck and trapped like a group of wolves might trap two little mice. They were tied to poles at the very top of the pyramid, and underneath, dancing around the pyramid with these terrible, terrible monsters, big like giants and hairy like gorillas with big red eyes and big sharp teeth. Their arms were very long with claws at the end of their creepy fingers, and they were dancing and jumping up and down around. They were marching and parading around the pyramid like a football team that had won the World Cup. But they were not smiling and holding up a golden cup. For these mighty beasts, their trophy was a king and his little princess daughter. Billy did not know what to do. He was frozen, and even the heat of the flames would not thaw him back into action. He was so scared until he looked up and he saw the king of the island crying, looking at his daughter, trying to get some help. Billy looked at his grandpa, and Grandpa gulped. Grandpa looked at Billy, but I don't think Grandpa knew what to do either.
Let's do it,"
Grandpa said. "Do what?" Billy pleaded for a reassuring answer. Grandpa picked up his gun and aimed it at one of the monsters. Bang! The shot hit the monster in the arm. Well, that was it. Billy tried to pick up his gun and shoot, but he didn't know how to do it. He couldn't pull the trigger.
"Give it to me,"
screamed Grandpa, and he showed Billy how to pull the trigger back and push the button before he pressed the trigger, releasing the bullet that shot through the thick smoky air to hit another monster in one of its eyes. That made all the monsters stop and turned around. They stopped dancing. All 10 of them looked at Billy and his grandpa, and then all 10 of them roared a terrible roar, their mouths wide open, revealing razor-like sharp teeth that sparkled against their blood-red eyes. The princess at the top of the pyramid had fainted because it was so scary, and the king screamed and pleaded for help. Billy and Grandpa still did not know what to do, and then the 10 monsters put down their fiery sticks and started running towards Billy and his grandpa, growling like angry tigers. "Ah!" screamed Billy. "Let's go!" Grandpa quickly agreed, and they turned around and they ran back towards the water. They had no idea what they were going to do, and they couldn't fight all these 10 monsters. But as they were running back to the rowing boat, an idea came to Billy. He dropped his gun and ran, not straight ahead, to the shore, but instead took a sharp right and ran around the side of the trees as Grandpa kept running towards the water. And because Billy was so small and it was so dark, the monsters didn't see him, and they all kept chasing Grandpa. As they were chasing Grandpa, Billy went back towards the pyramid and picked up one of the big sticks that was on fire, and he then turned back towards the shore and started to run at the monsters. So the monsters were chasing Grandpa, and Billy was chasing the monsters. As Grandpa was rowing the boat back to the ship, the monsters stood on the sand, growling and screaming at the captain. Billy threw the burning stick at the group of monstrous creatures, and as soon as the flames touched the monster's fur, they were all alight. The monster's fur was on fire. All 10 monsters were on fire, and they all jumped into the water to stop the fire from burning them alive. And that's where the whale came in. The whale winked at Billy and swam up from the deep ocean and up and up and up and jumped higher than ever into the sky, as high as an apartment block, a block of flats. And as the monsters were putting out their fiery bodies, the huge whale crashed down and landed on them all. The whale then smashed his big tail against all the 10 monsters, and they went flying right across into the middle of the deep, dark ocean, where they sank to the bottom like stones, never to be seen again. Then the whale swam up again and launched into the sky and splashed its enormous tail as its huge body crashed back into the water. The whale's body and tail created a mighty splash that sent water and waves flying into the middle of the island, where it extinguished and put out the fires that the monsters had made. Grandpa came back to the island in the rowing boats, where he met Billy on the shore. They looked at each other in disbelief, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. It was too amazing. "So, Grandpa, you were just the best hero in the world." Billy smiled. Billy and Grandpa made their way back into the middle of the island, where they climbed up the pyramid and cut the rope to release the king and the princess. Once free, the princess woke up, and the king was so happy that his daughter had been rescued that he told Billy that he would grant him anything at all from his kingdom on the island. "Even though our island is very small," continued the king, "I'm going to grant you such a big prize. But first, let's go and eat." And so the king took Billy to the other side of the island with Grandpa and the princess, where they sat down at the king's dinner table and had a very delicious feast, a buffet dinner. And as they talked over the food, it turned out that the princess was exactly the same age as Billy, and the king had the same birthday as Grandpa. They talked about all the adventures that Grandpa had been on, and then the princess described all the beautiful things on their island, while the king talked about the island and his history. Then it was Billy's turn to talk, but all he could talk about was going home alone after school, cooking his own dinner, washing and getting ready for bed by himself, and going to sleep before his mum came home. He explained that he couldn't see his dad until the weekends because he was always working, and for as long as he could remember, Billy had just been alone. His parents had to work because they didn't have much money, and then he started to cry. The dinner table was very quiet, and the king knew what the prize should be. After dinner, the king and the princess took Billy and Grandpa around the corner to a secret cave. They walked into the cave, and Billy's eyes lit up as the king spoke. "This is all for you," said the king. Billy's eyes grew larger as he looked around at all the gold and diamonds and jewelry and treasure, more than anybody could ever need. "I'm going to give this to you," said the king happily. And so the king and Grandpa and the princess and Billy and some of the king's men moved all the gold and diamonds and jewelry into the rowing boat, and then they rowed all the way back to the ship. Billy could not thank the king enough, and the princess gave Billy a little kiss on the cheek and told him not to worry about anything now. "So go home and live happily ever after," she said. They got to the boat, packed all the treasure on board, and set sail, heading towards the blue whale, and followed the path that it was swimming. It had been such an amazing long day. Billy and Grandpa went down into the ship again, and they washed their faces and brushed their teeth, and Billy lay down on his bed, where he fell fast asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow, even without a kiss from his mom. He had the deepest sleep anybody could ever have, and he must have slept for days. But when Billy opened his eyes, he was back in his bedroom, and it was dark. His mom had just given him a kiss on the head, and Billy rubbed his eyes as if it were all a dream. What time is it? What day is it?" "It's Monday night. I've just come home from work," said Mom. "Stay, Mom, please. I was having such a strange and scary dream," said Billy. "Of course I'll stay. But I was just about to ask you, why is your face all black? You got black marks all over it. It looks like soot or smoke. Did you forget to wash before you went to bed, and have you been playing with the matches again?" Billy jumped up and ran to the mirror to check his face. It was still sooty and black from the fire from the middle of the island. Billy ran into the living room, but still the same. Nothing had changed. He ran into the kitchen and looked under the cupboard, under the sink, and reached out and pulled out the tattered envelope. He pulled out the card and read it, but the words had changed. It now said, "You followed the whale. You rescued the princess. You deserve the treasure. Now live happily ever after." And just then, Billy saw the whale at the corner of his eye, and he jumped up and followed it to his toy room, and there he opened the cupboard and was almost blinded by the gold and diamonds and jewelry. It was all the treasure from the secret cave, from the king and the princess of the island, and it was real. Billy screamed and called his mom. She couldn't believe her eyes, and she called Dad straight away. "Come back home now," she shouted with joy down the phone, and Billy's dad came back home that very night. And the next day, they took all the treasure and put it in a bank, and they got hundreds and millions of pounds and dollars and euros. After that day, Billy's mommy and daddy didn't go back to work, not for a single day. They stayed home. And for the next long time, Billy grew up with his mommy and his daddy every single day. He got up in the morning and his mom was making breakfast. His daddy would help him get ready for school, and as he came back after school, dinner was ready, made by his mom or his dad, and Mom would help him do his homework, and the family would go out and take holidays on the weekends, and they would use the money to help people who needed it. And that's what they did for a long time. And often Billy would tell the story of Grandpa and the blue whale. And then, so often, on his way home, Billy would see the blue whale, and the blue whale would give him a wink. The end.